stood outside the tall glass building, holding his daughter's hand a little than usual. The morning sun reflected off the windows, making everything look expensive and out of reach. He looked down at his old shoes and tried not to think about how much he didn't belong here. His daughter, just 7 years old, looked up at him with curious eyes. "Daddy, is this where you're going to play piano?" He smiled, though his stomach was full of knots. "Maybe, sweetheart, if they like my music." The truth was, needed this job more than he wanted to admit. After his wife passed away 3 years ago, everything had fallen apart. The medical bills had eaten through their savings. He had sold the house, moved into a small apartment, and taken every piano gig he could find just to keep food on the table. Wedding receptions, hotel lobbies, restaurant corners. He played wherever they would have him. But this job was different. Industries was one of the biggest companies in the city. They were hosting a charity gala next month, and they needed a pianist. The pay was more than had made in the last 6 months combined. He couldn't mess this up. A woman at the front desk gave him a polite smile and told him to wait. He sat down in the lobby watching people in expensive suits walk past without even glancing at them. Everyone here moved with purpose, like they knew exactly where they were going and why. Felt invisible. Swung her legs back and forth, humming a little tune. She was the only good thing left in his life. Every time he wanted to give up, he looked at her face and found a reason to keep going. After 20 minutes, his name was called. A young man in a crisp shirt led them through a set of double doors and into a grand ballroom. His breath caught in his throat. The room was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The floor was polished marble, and there, in the center of it all, sat a beautiful grand piano. It was the kind of instrument had only seen in magazines. "You can begin whenever you're ready," the young man said. "Someone will be observing from upstairs." Nodded, though he didn't see anyone up there. He turned to and knelt down to her level. "I need you to sit right over there, okay? Be very quiet for Daddy." She kissed his cheek. "Good luck, Daddy, play the pretty one." He watched her skip over to a chair near the wall, then turned back to face the piano. His heart was pounding. He wiped his palms on his pants and sat down on the bench. The keys were cool under his fingers. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He had prepared a classical piece for this audition, something safe, something impressive, but when his fingers touched the keys, something else came out instead. It was a melody he hadn't played in 15 years, a song he had written when he was just 19 years old, sitting in a run-down community center with a broken piano and a heart full of dreams. He had written it for a girl with dark hair and a shy smile, a girl who had believed in him when no one else did. He didn't know why he was playing it now. Maybe it was the nerves. Maybe it was being in a place that reminded him of everything he never became. But the notes poured out of him like water, soft and aching and full of memories he had tried so hard to bury. The melody filled the ballroom. It floated up to the high ceilings and wrapped around the chandeliers. It was the most honest thing had played in years. He didn't notice the woman standing on the mezzanine above. Helena had been watching from the moment he sat down. As the CEO of the company, she didn't usually attend auditions, but something had told her to come today. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. She stood near the railing, a cup of coffee in her hand, watching the man at the piano. He looked tired. His clothes were simple. There was a little girl sitting near the wall, watching him with adoring eyes. Helena was about to turn away when the music started. At first, she thought it was just another classical piece, but then the melody shifted into something else, something familiar, something that made her whole body go still. She knew this song. She knew every note, every rise and fall, every pause and breath. She had heard it only once before, on a warm summer night when she was 18 years old. A boy had played it for her on a broken piano in a community center across town. He had told her he wrote it just for her. He had called it her lullaby. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Her assistant rushed over, asking if she was okay, but Helena couldn't speak. She couldn't move. Her eyes were locked on the man at the piano, and her mind was spinning back 15 years to a version of herself she had tried so hard to forget. That boy's name had been. He had been the son of a janitor. He had nothing to offer her except his music and his love, and she had let him go. No, that wasn't true. She hadn't let him go. She had been forced to let him go. Her mother had made sure of that. But here he was, after all these years, playing the same song he had written for her when they were just kids who thought love could conquer anything. Helena gripped the railing to steady herself. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. She watched him play, watched his fingers move across the keys, watched his face lost in the music. He hadn't changed much. A little older, a little more worn down by life. But it was him. She was sure of it. The song ended. The last note hung in the air like a question waiting to be answered. Down below opened his eyes and let out a slow breath. He had no idea why he had played that song. It had been a mistake. These people wanted something elegant and polished, not some old melody from his past. He stood up and looked around, ready to apologize, ready to be told he wasn't what they were looking for. But up on the mezzanine, hidden in the shadows, Helena pressed a hand to her chest and felt something crack open inside her, something she had locked away a long time ago. She didn't go down to meet him. She couldn't. Not yet. She needed time to think, to breathe, to figure out what this meant. But as she watched him take his daughter's hand and walk toward the exit, she made a decision. She was going to hire him. And then she was going to find out if the boy she had once loved still remembered the girl who had broken his heart. 15 years ago, Helena was a different person. She didn't wear designer clothes or run a company worth millions. She was just a quiet 18-year-old girl trying to survive at a school where she didn't belong. She had gotten into Westbrook Academy on a scholarship. It was one of the most expensive private schools in the city, filled with kids whose parents owned businesses and vacation homes. Helena owned 2 pairs of jeans and a second-hand backpack she hid in her locker so no one would see the broken zipper. Every day, she pretended. She laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. She made excuses for why she couldn't join her classmates at expensive restaurants. She learned how to blend in, how to become invisible, how to survive in a world that wasn't made for people like her. But there was one place where she didn't have to pretend. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, Helena volunteered at a community center on the east side of town. It was a small, run-down building with peeling paint and flickering lights, but it was real. The people there didn't care about her clothes or her background. They just cared that she showed up. That was where she met. He was the son of the janitor who worked at the community center. He was 19, with messy brown hair and hands that were always covered in piano dust. There was an old piano in the corner of the main hall, missing a few keys and badly out of tune, but played it like it was a concert grand. The first time Helena heard him play, she stopped in the middle of the hallway and forgot how to breathe. He looked up and caught her staring. She expected him to be annoyed, but instead he smiled. "You like music?" She nodded, too embarrassed to speak. "Come sit," he said, sliding over on the bench. "I'll teach you something." That was how it started. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Helena would finish her volunteer work and then find her way to that old piano, taught her simple melodies, laughing when she hit the wrong notes, cheering when she got them right. He never asked about her school or her family. He just asked if she was happy. No one had ever asked her that before. Weeks turned into months. Helena found herself thinking about all the time. In class, during meals, late at night when she couldn't sleep. He was the first person who made her feel like she could be herself, not the scholarship girl, not the pretender, just Helena. One evening, as the sun was setting and the community center was emptying out, took her hand and led her to the piano. "I made something for you," he said, his voice nervous in a way she had never heard before. He sat down and began to play. The melody was soft and gentle like a whisper. It rose and fell like waves on a quiet shore. Helena felt tears prick her eyes, though she couldn't explain why. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given her. When he finished, looked at her with serious eyes. "I call it Helena's lullaby. I wrote it for you, because you're the only good thing in my life right now." She didn't know what to say, so she kissed him instead. That summer was the happiest of Helena's life. She and spent every moment they could together. They walked through the park at night, talking about their dreams. He wanted to become a real musician, to play in concert halls around the world. She wanted to build something of her own, to never feel poor or powerless again. "We'll do it together," told her one night, holding her close. "You and me against the world." She believed him, she really did. But then everything changed. Helena's mother had been working as a housekeeper for a wealthy widower named Richard. He was older, kind, and very rich. That summer, he asked her mother to marry him. Overnight, Helena's life transformed. She moved out of their tiny apartment and into a mansion. She had her own room, her own bathroom, new clothes, and a future she had never dared to imagine. Richard treated her like a daughter. He paid for her college, introduced her to important people, and promised to leave her a share of his company. But her mother made one thing very clear. "You are a now," she said, her voice cold and firm. "That boy from the community center is your past. He has nothing. He is nothing. If you want this life, you need to let him go." Helena tried to argue. She tried to explain that was different, that he loved her, that she loved him. But her mother wouldn't listen. "Love doesn't pay bills," her mother said. "Love doesn't build empires. You have one chance to become something, Helena. Don't throw it away for a janitor's son." Helena didn't know what to do. She was trapped between the life she had always wanted and the boy who had shown her what happiness felt like. She decided to wait. She would go to her graduation party, smile for the cameras, make her mother happy, and then she would find and explain everything. They would figure it out together. They always did. But didn't wait. He showed up at the graduation party unannounced, wearing his best clothes, which weren't very good, and carrying a single rose. He wanted to surprise her. He wanted to tell her that he had saved enough money for a small apartment. He wanted to ask her to build a life with him. He never got the chance. Security stopped him at the door. Helena's mother saw him and called him a trespasser. Before Helena even knew what was happening, was being dragged away by two guards while guests whispered and pointed. She saw him through the crowd. Their eyes met for just a moment. She saw the hurt on his face, the confusion, the heartbreak. He was waiting for her to say something, to do something, to fight for him. But she didn't move. Her mother's hand was on her arm, holding her in place. The guests were watching. Richard was watching. And Helena was 18 years old, terrified and ashamed of where she came from. So she stood there and did nothing. Was thrown out into the street. He didn't come back, he didn't call, he simply disappeared. Helena spent the next 3 months trying to find him. She went to the community center, but his father had quit. She asked around the neighborhood, but no one knew where they had gone. She even hired a private investigator with money she had secretly saved, but he found nothing. Was gone, and it was her fault. Years passed. Helena buried herself in work. She graduated top of her class, joined Richard's company, and climbed the ladder until she became CEO after his death. She changed her last name too. She changed everything about herself. But she never forgot that song. She still had an old phone in her desk drawer, the kind that nobody used anymore. On it was a recording she had made secretly. The night played his lullaby for her. Sometimes, late at night when the office was empty, she would take out that phone and listen. And she would wonder what her life would have been like if she had been brave enough to run after him. She never found an answer. Until now. Until a tired man in old shoes walked into her building and played the song that had haunted her for 15 years. For the next 5 days, Helena did everything she could to avoid. She had her assistant handle all the gala arrangements. She rescheduled meetings that might put them in the same room. She came into the office early and left late, always checking the hallways before she walked through them. It was exhausting, it was childish, but she wasn't ready to face him. She didn't know if she would ever be ready. Every night she lay awake in her expensive apartment, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the past. She kept replaying that moment at the graduation party, the look on his face when security dragged him away, the way he had searched the crowd for her, hoping she would say something. And she had just stood there, frozen, silent, a coward. How could she possibly face him now? What would she even say? Sorry I let them throw you out like garbage. Sorry I never came after you. Sorry I chose money and status over the only person who ever truly loved me. There were no words big enough to fix what she had done. But fate had other plans. On the 6th day, there was an emergency. The sound system for the gala had been delivered to the wrong address, and now the vendor was threatening to cancel the entire contract. Helena's assistant tried to handle it, but the vendor refused to speak with anyone except the CEO herself. "I'm sorry," her assistant said, standing nervously in her doorway. "But he's in the ballroom right now, testing the piano. If you go down there, you'll run into him." Helena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later she would have to face. Maybe it was better to get it over with. "Fine," she said quietly, "I'll go." The walk to the ballroom felt like the longest of her life. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing through the empty hallway. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She pushed open the double doors and stepped inside. Was sitting at the piano, but he wasn't playing. He was just sitting there, staring at the keys like they held some kind of answer. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders were hunched forward like he was carrying something heavy. He looked up when he heard her enter. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Helena forced herself to keep walking. "I need to make a call about the sound system," she said, keeping her voice professional. "I'll just be a few minutes." Nodded slowly, "Take your time." She walked past him, her whole body tense. She could feel his eyes on her. She made the call quickly, sorting out the mess with the vendor in less than 10 minutes. But when she hung up, she didn't leave. She stood there, her back to him, trying to find the courage to turn around. "You changed your name," said quietly. Helena's breath caught in her throat. "What?" "Your last name. It used to be, now it's." His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something raw. "I didn't recognize you at first. You look different. You sound different. But then I saw the way you hold your hands when you're nervous. You still do that thing where you press your thumbs into your palms." Helena looked down at her hands. He was right. She hadn't even realized she was doing it. Slowly, she turned around to face him. "Hello," she said softly. He looked at her for a long moment. 15 years of silence hung between them, heavy and thick. "Hello, Helena." She didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was him. But suddenly they were both standing, facing each other in the middle of that enormous ballroom, and the distance between them felt like miles. "Why didn't you come after me?" asked. His voice cracked on the last word. "That night at the party, I kept waiting for you to stop them. I kept thinking you would come outside and find me, but you never did." Helena felt tears burning in her eyes. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. But my mother was holding my arm and everyone was watching and I was so scared and ashamed and I didn't know what to do." "So you did nothing?" "Yes." The word came out like a confession. "I did nothing, and I have hated myself for it every single day since." Turned away from her, running a hand through his hair. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? I loved you, Helena. I thought you loved me too. And then I showed up to surprise you and I got thrown out like I was trash, like I was nothing. You were never nothing to me, Helena said, her voice breaking. You were everything. You were the only real thing in my life. Then why didn't you fight for us? Helena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because I was 18 and poor and terrified. Because my mother told me you would ruin my future. Because I thought I could fix it later, that I could find you and explain everything. She took a shaky breath. I looked for you for months after you left. I went to the community center. I asked everyone I could find. I even hired someone to track you down, but you were gone. You just vanished. Was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. I left town that night. My father and I packed up everything and moved 3 states away. I couldn't stay here. Everything reminded me of you. I'm so sorry, Helena whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it. Looked at her, and for the first time some of the anger in his eyes started to fade. He didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he was listening. I built a life, he said slowly, after I left. It took a long time, but I found my way. I got a job playing piano at a hotel. I met someone. He paused, and his voice grew heavy. Her name was Grace. She was kind and patient, and she loved me even though I was still broken from losing you. Helena felt something twist in her chest. You got married. Yes, we had a daughter. A small smile crossed his face when he said her name. She's 7 now. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. The little girl at the audition, Helena said softly. She's beautiful. Nodded. Grace passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. It happened fast. One day she was fine, and then... He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Helena's heart broke for him. I'm so sorry. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, he said quietly. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something. I'm not the same boy you knew 15 years ago. That boy was full of dreams and hope and stupid ideas about love conquering everything. This man, he gestured to himself, this man just wants to take care of his daughter. That's all that matters to me now. Helena nodded slowly. She understood. He wasn't here to rekindle old feelings or revisit the past. He was here because he needed a job, because he had a child to feed and bills to pay. She was just another employer to him now. And maybe that was exactly what she deserved. I won't make this awkward for you, she said, straightening her shoulders. You have the job. You'll play at the gala, you'll get paid, and then you never have to see me again if that's what you want. Studied her face for a long moment. You really did change, didn't you? I had to. He picked up his jacket from the piano bench and walked toward the door. But just before he left, he stopped and looked back at her. That song I played at the audition, he said. I didn't mean to play it, it just came out, but I want you to know something. He paused. I never played it for anyone else, not even Grace. That song was always yours. Then he walked out, leaving Helena alone in the ballroom with nothing but silence and the ghost of a melody she had never been able to forget. Over the next 2 weeks, something unexpected started to happen. It began with the rehearsals. Needed to practice in the ballroom to get familiar with the piano and the acoustics of the space. Helena told herself she was just checking on the gala preparations, but somehow, every evening, she found herself standing in the doorway, listening to him play. At first, they barely spoke. He would nod at her when she came in. She would nod back. Then she would sit in one of the chairs near the wall and pretend to answer emails on her phone while the music wrapped around her like a warm blanket. But slowly, the silence between them began to thaw. One evening, stopped playing in the middle of a piece and looked over at her. You're here again. Helena looked up from her phone. I'm just checking on things. You've been checking on things every night for a week. There was a hint of a smile on his face. If I didn't know better, I'd think you actually like my music. She felt her cheeks get warm. Maybe I do. After that, they started talking. Small things at first. How the gala preparations were going. what songs he was planning to play, whether the caterer had finally fixed the menu. But then the conversations grew longer, deeper. He told her about the years after he left. The cheap apartments, the bad gigs, the nights when he wasn't sure if he would make it. He told her about meeting Grace at a coffee shop, how she had spilled tea on his jacket and apologized so many times that he asked her to dinner just to make her stop. Helena found herself laughing for the first time in months, and when she laughed, looked at her like he was seeing someone he used to know. She told him about building the company after Richard died. The long hours, the impossible decisions, the loneliness of sitting in a corner office where everyone wanted something from her but no one really knew her. She told him things she had never told anyone. And he listened, really listened, the way he used to all those years ago. Then there was. One evening, brought his daughter to the rehearsal because his babysitter had canceled. Helena watched the little girl wander around the ballroom, touching the curtains and staring up at the chandeliers with wide eyes. "This place is like a castle," said in wonder. Helena smiled and walked over to her. "Would you like to see something special?" She took his hand and led her to a small balcony that overlooked the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Gasped and pressed her face against the glass. "It's so pretty," she whispered. "I come here when I need to think," Helena said softly. "It reminds me that there's a whole world out there, even when everything feels hard." Looked up at her with serious eyes. "My mommy used to say that too. She said whenever I feel sad, I should look at the sky and remember that she's watching me from up there." Helena felt her heart crack open. She knelt down to level and smiled gently. "Your mommy sounds like she was very wise." "She was the best," said simply. Then she reached out and took Helena's hand. "You're nice, I like you." From across the room, watched them together. And something in his chest shifted, something he hadn't expected to feel ever again. But not everyone was happy about these late-night rehearsals. Helena was engaged to a man named Vincent Cole. He was handsome, wealthy, and connected to some of the most powerful families in the city. Their relationship had been arranged more than felt. Vincent's family owned a major investment firm, and a merger between their companies would solve all of Helena's financial problems. She didn't love him. She wasn't sure she even liked him. But her mother had pushed for the engagement, and Helena had been too tired to fight. Vincent had noticed that Helena was coming home late. He had noticed that she seemed distracted, distant, different, and he didn't like it. One afternoon, he showed up at the office unannounced and found Helena in the ballroom, laughing at something it said. The smile on her face faded the moment she saw Vincent standing in the doorway. "Who is this?" Vincent asked coldly, his eyes fixed on. "This is the pianist for the gala," Helena said quickly. "We were just going over the schedule." Vincent looked at like he was examining something unpleasant. "The pianist, I see." He turned back to Helena with a thin smile. "Darling, a word, in private." They stepped into the hallway, and Vincent's polite mask immediately dropped. "What's going on, Helena? You've been spending every evening in that ballroom with some random musician. People are starting to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Helena said firmly. "He's doing a job, I'm overseeing the gala, that's all." But Vincent wasn't convinced. He was the kind of man who saw threats everywhere, who kept score of every slight and every weakness. He didn't know about Helena's past but he could sense that something was wrong. "I'm going to look into him," Vincent said, "just to make sure there are no surprises." Helena felt a chill run down her spine. "That's not necessary." "It's already done." Vincent kissed her cheek, but his eyes were cold. "I'll see you at dinner." He walked away, leaving Helena standing alone in the hallway with a knot of fear in her stomach. But the worst was yet to come. 2 days later, Helena's mother appeared in her office. Was a woman who had clawed her way from poverty to power, and she had no patience for weakness. She had heard the rumors about Helena spending time with some pianist, and she had done her own digging. She sat down across from her daughter's desk and placed a photograph on the table. It was an old picture from the community center, showing a young playing piano with a teenage Helena sitting beside him. "Imagine my surprise," said, her voice like ice, "when I discovered that the man you've been spending your evenings with is the same boy I removed from your life 15 years ago." Helena's blood went cold. "Mother, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. This ends now." Leaned forward, her eyes hard as stone. "Vincent's family is offering us a merger that will save this company from bankruptcy. If you embarrass them by running around with a janitor's son, they will walk away. And everything Richard built, everything I sacrificed for you, will be gone." "This isn't about," Helena said, though her voice wavered. "He's just playing at the gala, that's all." "Don't lie to me," stood up and straightened her jacket. "I saw the way you looked at him in that photograph. You looked at him the same way back then, and I won't let you throw away your future again." She walked to the door and paused with her hand on the frame. "End it, Helena, whatever this is, end it, or I will." Then she was gone, and Helena was left alone with the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on her chest. She thought about the company, the employees who depended on her, the legacy Richard had trusted her to protect. Then she thought about the way he looked at her when she laughed, about small hand in hers, about the song he had written for her when they were young and foolish and believed that love was enough. For the first time in 15 years, Helena didn't know what to do. But she knew she couldn't keep standing still, because one way or another the gala was coming, and everything was about to change. The night of the gala arrived faster than Helena expected. The ballroom had been transformed into something magical. Thousands of tiny lights hung from the ceiling like stars. White roses filled every corner. Guests in elegant gowns and tailored suits moved through the space, laughing and clinking champagne glasses. Helena stood near the entrance, greeting people with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was wearing a silver dress that cost more than most people earned in a month. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a woman who had everything. But inside, she felt like she was falling apart. Vincent stood beside her, his hand resting on her lower back like he owned her. He had been watching her closely all week, ever since his investigators had dug up the connection between her and he hadn't confronted her about it yet. He was saving that for later, she was sure. Vincent was the kind of man who liked to play his cards at the perfect moment. Her mother was there too, circulating through the crowd, making sure everyone knew that an engagement announcement was coming tonight. Had planned everything. The timing, the speech, even the ring Vincent would present. Helena was supposed to act surprised. She was supposed to say yes. She was supposed to smile and let her life be decided for her, just like she had done 15 years ago. Across the room, sat at the grand piano, playing soft background music while guests mingled. He looked handsome in his simple black suit. His eyes found hers once, just for a moment, and then he looked away. Helena felt her heart ache. She had barely spoken to him since her mother's visit. She had told herself it was for the best. She had told herself that she needed to focus on the company, on the merger, on the future that everyone expected her to have. But every night, alone in her apartment, she took out that old phone and listened to his song. And every night, she wondered what her life would look like if she had been brave enough to make a different choice. The evening moved forward like a train she couldn't stop. Dinner was served, speeches were made, donors wrote checks, everything was going according to plan. Then it was time for the final performance. The room grew quiet as adjusted his seat at the piano. Helena watched him from her table, her hands pressed tightly in her lap. Vincent leaned over and whispered in her ear, "After this song, I'm going to announce our engagement. Try to look happy, darling." Helena didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight to speak. His fingers touched the keys, and he began to play. At first, it was a classical piece, something elegant and safe, the kind of music that rich people expected at events like this. Helena felt herself relax just a little. But then the melody shifted. It started slowly, a few notes here and there that didn't belong to the original piece. Helena's breath caught in her chest. She knew those notes. She had heard them 1,000 times in her dreams. Was playing her song. The melody filled the ballroom, soft and aching and unbearably beautiful. It was the same song he had written for her 15 years ago, sitting at a broken piano in a run-down community center. The same song he had played at his audition without meaning to. The same song he had never played for anyone else. Helena felt tears spill down her cheeks before she could stop them. Around her, the guests continued to chat quietly, unaware of what this music meant. But Helena knew, and when she looked she saw that he was looking right back at her. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't demanding that she choose him. He was simply reminding her of who she used to be, the girl who had dreams, the girl who had believed in love, the girl who had been brave enough to sit next to a janitor's son and learn how to play piano. The song ended. The last note faded into silence. Then Vincent stood up. "Ladies and," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the room, "I have a very special announcement to make." Helena watched him pull a velvet box from his pocket. She watched him turn toward her with that practiced smile. She watched her mother nodding approvingly from across the room. And something inside her finally broke. "No." The word came out quiet at first. Vincent frowned, leaning closer. "What did you say?" Helena stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I said no." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Vincent's face went red with anger and embarrassment. "Helena, what are you doing? Sit down." "I'm done sitting down." She looked at him directly for the first time in months. "I'm done pretending. I don't love you, Vincent. I never did. And I'm not going to marry you just because it's good for business." "You're making a scene," he hissed. "Good." She pulled off the diamond bracelet he had given her and placed it in his hand. "Find someone else to be your trophy wife. I'm finished." She turned and walked away from the table, leaving Vincent standing there with his mouth open and his ring still in its box. Her mother intercepted her near the door, grabbing her arm with sharp fingers. "What do you think you're doing? You're destroying everything." Helena looked at her mother with tired eyes. "No, Mother, I'm saving myself. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want instead of what you want." She pulled her arm free and walked out of the ballroom. The hallway was quiet. Her heels echoed on the marble floor. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she needed to get away, to breathe, to think. She found herself on the small balcony where she had stood looking out at the city lights. The night air was cool against her wet cheeks. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps behind her. Stood in the doorway, his jacket off and his sleeves rolled up. He looked at her with soft, uncertain eyes. "That was brave," he said quietly. Helena laughed, though it came out more like a sob. "That was terrifying." He walked over and stood beside her at the railing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, two people who had been broken by the same story, finally standing on the same side. "I didn't play that song to pressure you," said finally. "I just wanted you to remember." "I never forgot." Helena wiped her eyes and looked at him, not for a single day. Reached out and gently took her hand. It was the first time they had touched in 15 years. His fingers were warm and familiar, and Helena felt something inside her finally settle into place. "I can't promise you anything," he said honestly. "I'm a single father with a small apartment and a used car. I don't have money or power or any of the things you're used to." "I don't want those things." Helena squeezed his hand. "I want something real. I want something true." He smiled at her, that same smile she had fallen in love with when she was 18 years old. "Then maybe we can figure it out together, slowly. No rush." She nodded, feeling lighter than she had in years. 6 months later, Helena had restructured her company without Vincent's family. It had been hard. She had lost some investors and gained new ones. But for the first time, the business was truly hers. She showed up at school recital on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, had saved her a seat in the second row, spotted her from the stage and waved excitedly before her performance. After the show, the three of them went out for ice cream, talked nonstop about her piano lessons and her teacher and the cat she wanted to adopt, laughed at her stories, and Helena found herself laughing too. Later that evening, after had gone to bed, sat down at the old upright piano in his living room. Helena sat beside him on the bench, just like she used to. He began to play her song. But this time, halfway through, he paused and looked at her. "I never finished this, you know. I wrote the beginning for the girl I loved, but I never knew how it was supposed to end." Helena smiled and placed her fingers on the keys next to his. "Then let's finish it together." And as the melody filled the small apartment, weaving through the years of pain and silence and waiting, it finally found its ending. Not with a grand gesture or a perfect moment. Just two people, side by side, playing the same song at last.